Action 1, inspired next.
All right. Hi, everybody. You're listening to episode 28 of SG2 on Space. And this is your host, Shen Ge. So I'm presuming if you're listening to us, either at weareA1.com, my Facebook page, facebook.com/The Shen Show. Yes, that was an old name for it. Or facebook.com/ Facebook.com/Action1Media, and of course my YouTube at youtube.com/CAST725. So, in any case, why don't we just jump straight in? All right. So, a lot of things going on right now. Now, I did notice that SpaceX just launched today, but for the sake of time, let me skip over that. I will say that one of the biggest things happening this week is the National Space Symposium at Colorado Springs. 2 weeks ago, or a couple weeks ago, our Vice President, American Vice President, Mike Pence, has said that we want to get back to the moon. NASA should get back to the moon by 2024 with footprints on the ground, like the Apollo era, right? Except this time just stay. So, NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine, this time at one of the biggest conferences, space conferences in the country, he talked and noted that administration, is committed to doing that. He also said, interestingly enough, that the International Space Station will be continued. So there were some concern that the ISS would be defunded, let's just say, or not have continuous funding by 2024. But now it looks like both sides of the of the political spectrum have come together and said, hey, we need to secure direct funding of the International Space Station beyond 2025, which I think is a very smart idea. That's my view. I mean, it's been up there for 20 years. We spent cumulatively over $100 billion building it, so it's silly for me to not maximize the time you use it, right? So this is going to be through at least 2030. So legislation passed the Senate unanimously in December, and it was reintroduced and approved unanimously in committee last week. Last week meaning, early April. All right, so that is great news. All right, now what about the moon though? Can we land on the moon by 2024? Well, NASA's going to have some serious, we got to get the budgeting in order, right? Otherwise we can't get there. I mean, that's a pretty tough deadline. So, Bridenstine said technically I think it's achievable. The plans that we laid out for 2028 are the same plans that we're going to use to get to the moon in 2024. We're just going to have to move forward some of our investments, but it's all achievable. Now, he said funding is still, quote-unquote, key. So, NASA's currently working on the amendment to its fiscal year 2020 budget request, because this budget was issued before Pence announced NASA's accelerated timeframe for a moon landing. So, hopefully that gets approved. I'm guessing it's going to be more than what was initially proposed by NASA. So, yeah, we'll see what happens, right? Okay. Also, just a note that there was, okay. Also, since we're talking about the moon here, Lockheed Martin, one of the main contractors to NASA for basically developing Orion, the capsule, to, that's going to go to the moon, as well as the actual lunar landing system, at least one of the major companies that's been selected. So Lockheed Martin presented their new designs for a human lunar lander concept that can take people to and from the lunar surface. This was, yep. So what did they say? By the way, they said they can do it within the next 3 years, as long as resources. Once again, it comes down to money, right? But let me just explain some of the technical parts, because, yeah, we all know you need money. All right. So the vehicle has two parts, a lander portion that can travel down to the ground, and an ascent vehicle that can lift astronauts off the moon's surface. In this way, it's kind of like Apollo, right? That's what it had. It had like descent and ascent together, land on the moon. All right, soft land, and then the ascent part leaves. Okay, and the descent part stays. So, the lander is meant to travel to and from the Gateway. The Gateway is a new space station that's going to basically orbit the moon, right? So, essentially, astronauts will travel to the Gateway from Earth and then take the lander from the station to the moon. And then the ascent vehicle will then bring them back to the station. So, yeah. So how are they going to do this within just 3 years? Well, they are going to reuse some technology from developing Orion. All right. So what is going to happen is that, so basically they have to scrap some of the older design, which was involved developing a whole new heavier lander. So this new concept is that they won't be building the vehicle completely from scratch. So they're going to use a lot of the components from Orion, which have already been under development and will be launched in 2020 for its test flight, the Orion crew capsule. So, by the way, Orion has been worked on for the last 10 years. So it's way more developed than the lunar lander, which has yet to be, there's no metal cutting as far as yet. No set clearly there's set design now, but, Anyway, point is, what is going to happen is that the propulsion systems and the materials and the computers used in Orion would also be used for this kind of lander. So build on what you already have, right? Okay. And interesting enough, the ascent portion of the lander is going to use the same engines derived from the Orion service module. And the service module of Orion is a cylindrical vehicle that rises into space along with Orion, providing power and transport during flight. So, which is interesting to note. So, yeah, that is highly ambitious, but you got to match NASA's ambition, right? And hopefully money will come in. So now this does sacrifice the money that could be used for Gateway. So. Previously, the full lunar gateway, the space station around the moon, had multiple modules strung together, right? Kind of like the space station. You have multiple modules. You deliver it one time and string them together. All right. That's cool. But since now the focus is on speed, we're just going to have to only build the most essential module. So it's going to be a much smaller lunar space station. All right. Since, as Brendenstein says, as NASA Administrator Jim Brendenstein said, the first phase is speed. We want to get those boots on the moon as soon as possible. We don't want to take away anything from getting those boots on the moon. Anything that is a distraction from making that happen, we're getting rid of. So, yep, let's see what happens, right? Yeah. Now, okay, I need to make a slight correction. I said that NASA already selected Lockheed Martin. That's actually not true. NASA has not made any decision yet on which companies will build the first human lunar landers. So that really depends on NASA's budget, which is, like I said, they just proposed another one to Congress. So let's see what happens. Regardless, Lockheed stands a good chance. I mean, they built the Orion, so but maybe somebody else, maybe NASA will award to somebody else. Who knows? So, I was gonna play a little video here, but let's see what Brendenstein says. Doesn't have to be the whole thing.
A lot of excitement from all of our international partners, and thank you for all of your support on the International Space Station and everything we're going to do together in the future. Know this: the new direction of putting humans on the moon in 2024 is not an America alone effort. We need all of our international partners. In fact, none of us can do what we want to achieve alone. And all of those activities that we had built up for our 2028 moon landing with our international partners, they all continue. So for all of our partners in the room, and I heard a lot about it last night as we were bowling, know this: this is all about leadership. And when I say leadership, I'm not talking about the United States of America. I'm talking about leadership with all of our international partners. And we can do this, and we need your help. Now, I'll tell you, we're going to be going back to Congress with an increased budget request. And to achieve this objective, if we could maybe ask our international partners to step up a little more, it'd be great as well. But it's also true that the partnership needs to grow. There are now more space agencies on the surface of the planet than ever before. And I was learning that there were new space agencies last night as we were bowling. And by the way, some of them maybe don't have a whole lot of capability yet, because maybe they're less than a year old, but they can sure bowl a lot better than I can. So this is a great opportunity for diplomacy. It's a great opportunity for leadership. It's a great opportunity to achieve things that have never been done before.
Put your money where your community is. Get in the action at weareA1.com.
Girl power.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your girl Janetta with A1 Live Pop-Up here at African Fashion Week Art, Wine, and Culture event. We are having an amazing time. They have some lovely art pieces to see. So go ahead, get down here. You still have time. Everybody get in the action.
Put your money where your community is. Get in the action at weareA1.com.
Fast, holding on so we can make it last. 'Cause we got that fire in our bones, taking off on the road. Here we go, oh, here we go. We got that fire in our soul, little out of control. Here we go, oh, here we go.
Okay, so we are back, and you are listening to SG2 on Space with your host Shen Ge, episode number 28. So before we went on break, I had some special announcements because there was a it was the week of the National Space Symposium in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and so talked about the fact that As a reminder, NASA's planning to land humans on the moon by 2024, accelerated schedule from the earlier 2028. And so NASA's proposed a increased budget to Congress. And also to note, Lockheed Martin has also revealed their new, more streamlined, faster design, which would basically reuse technology from the Orion crew capsule that they've been developing for the last decade. So let us cross our fingers and hope, NASA gets increased budget and everybody's happy, right? And also to note is that Brendan Stein, our NASA administrator, has said that he is seeking, as you saw in the video, he's seeking international cooperation, right? So for the ISS, we have 14 partners. For the International Space Station, we have 14 partners. And he would like to work with all of them, and we would like to work with all of them and continue to work with other newer agencies that have pretty much, didn't exist before. There's more and more countries with space capabilities. I think in a future episode, this just gave me an idea. What I'm going to do is go over some of the newer space agencies. I think that'd be quite illuminating in terms of knowledge for the public. Yeah, because, for instance, I know Australia did not have a space agency until late last year. So, just, that's something to note, right? Yeah, okay. Note to self. All right. So, like I said, I was going to, and also the one other thing I would like to mention as a reminder, not a reminder, but as a note, is that the International Space Station, the funding is going to be, is extending the lifetime of the ISS to beyond 2030 at the minimum, which is really good. So not only will we have a space station around the moon, the Lunar Gateway, we will also continue to have a space station around Earth, which is awesome. Keep it up. So now speaking of all this stuff, right? Speaking of the moon, as I have repeatedly said a couple of times, the Israeli Bereshit, it's Hebrew for Genesis, from the Torah. In fact, it's the first word in the Torah. Torah is, I guess, the Old Testament for Christians. I should have known that, but I just learned it from an Israeli guy today, since I asked him in the middle. Anyways, yes, I'm not going to talk about work because some of that stuff maybe should not be mentioned. Point is, yes, so it's Genesis. It's supposed to be the first lander ever by Israel to go to the moon. And in fact, if it has succeeded, it would have been the fourth country to successfully land a lander on the moon. Unfortunately, it crash landed at like 150 miles an hour or something ridiculous. All right. Which basically means it got completely destroyed. Now, to me, that's still a landing. It's a crash landing, right? I mean, come on. They're still the fourth country to have something on the moon, even though, obviously it's a wreck. So that I think it's an accomplishment in itself that I managed to get there. All right. So, and this, remember, this was built by a nonprofit company, all right, called Space IL. So this was a fairly small team, and they were able to raise, a large amount of money and work with, but not as significantly large, okay? And they worked with the Israeli Space Agency to do this. So it crashed around 3:25 p.m. Eastern Time, or 1925 GMT. So mission control lost communications with this little spacecraft when it was about 489 feet, aka 149 meters above the moon's surface. Okay. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel said, if at first you don't succeed, you try again. So clearly the Prime Minister was watching the landing attempt for Space IL's control center in Yehud, Israel. So this was going to land touchdown, gently, in Mare Serenatis, which is the Sea of Serenity. So, and it launched on a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket on February 22nd from Cape Canaveral, like most of the rockets do here from the States. I'm going to explain to you a few other things. Bereshit is about the size of a washing machine, so it's very small. Even if it had landed, it would have only lasted 2 days in the really harsh lunar environment. So, and it would have done really, a little bit of science. It's equipped with cameras and instruments that can measure the magnetic environment of its target site. It also had a time capsule of documents, including the entire English language Wikipedia library, the Torah, and the Israeli flag and Declaration of Independence. Now, I'm not sure if any of that survived. That definitely the scientific instruments did not survive. But maybe the flag and the Torah, I don't know. Maybe some of it survived. What would be funny is when we send humans back to the moon, they can just collect the pieces and see if it's working. I think that'd be kind of interesting. So, anyways, now note that the spacecraft itself, the spacecraft that took the lander there, it has a laser retro reflector made by NASA Goddard Space Flight Center, so that could remain operational for decades, right? So that's kind of cool. But in any case, we can play a little bit. Now this is mostly in Hebrew, so but you can see what happened during the last stages. I don't know if it's going to show it. No, it's not going to show it crashing because the what do you call it? The communications broke down in the last couple hundred feet. But let's take a look.
כשהחללית נמצאת בזווית, ובואו נראה מה מפתיעים אותנו, זה מצלמת הסלפי.
So this wonderful selfie picture from an altitude of about 22 kilometers is on the background of the moon as we are approaching the landing site.
אני חייב להדגיש, כשתכננו את המשימה, לא היה ברור לנו שנוכל להוריד תמונות במהלך הנחיתה, אבל הודות לתקשורת עם נאסא, thanks to the communication with the NASA, with JPL communication network, it is possible to bring the pictures online.
Okay, so there was some English. I'm a little surprised, but that's cool, I guess, unless you knew Hebrew, which unfortunately I don't. I would like to know all languages, alas. In any case, so it's a little unfortunate, but hey, they accomplished so much. So congratulations. All right. So I figure we're talk a little bit more about these commercial companies. Might as well before we jump into. So I'm skipping, turning the schedule around a little bit, since typically I talk about what's going on in the universe, and then I talk about commercial companies. But let me go on and talk about some more of these space companies, since we're on the flow of things, right? So, there's basically a lot of these new space companies, right, that are closer to here to Earth. We got companies that's building small satellites and small satellite launchers, right? So that's one of the hot areas right now in the space industry, to be able to, due to the miniaturization of electronics and the fact that we have more powerful electronics and computers than ever before, smaller satellites can do a lot of stuff at a much lower cost than what it used to. Okay, so for instance, one company that I've mentioned before is Rocket Lab, which is a New Zealand / American company that has built launch vehicles, right? Small launch vehicles called Electron to deliver small satellites in orbit. Guess what? Now they're also saying we're going to be a one-stop shop. We're going to build satellites too. So they have just unveiled a in-house satellite platform designed to host customer payloads. So they're not building satellites for their own research or whatever, or communications. They're or remote sensing or whatever. They're basically saying, okay, let's just say you want a satellite that could, take pictures at a resolution of, say, 1 meter, and you basically develop this camera. Okay, you don't want to develop the satellite because you don't have the expertise. You just have the expertise with the camera system. Okay. Then you go approach Rocket Lab and say, hey, here's my payload. It's this camera system. I need 50 of your satellites. I'm going to buy 50 of your platforms, and you guys integrate it for me, okay, and figure out how to launch and all that. And we're obviously pay some money. So in other words, yeah. So it's like you buy a computer, right? And you want to use some specialized software to do something. Well, they're like the computer, and okay. Point is, I don't need that analogy. All right. Yeah, I think you understand. So the satellite line is going to be known as Photon. So it's going to provide an end-to-end spaceflight services, because unlike typical small satellite, what do you call it, platform developers, they have a rocket as well. So it's like, oh my gosh, you can build our satellite and you can launch it. Great. All right. So typically for most other companies, you would have to find someone to build your satellite, and you would have to find somebody else to launch it. All right. So it's a two-step way, and you probably end up paying more money, right? That's the idea anyway. So once again, this was something that was unveiled at the 35th Space Symposium in Colorado Springs this week. All right. So Rocket Lab CEO Peter Beck said, as a turnkey solution for complete small satellite missions, Rocket Lab brings space within easy reach. We enable our customers to focus on their payload and mission. We look after the rest. All right. So, yeah, that is pretty amazing, I would say. So look forward to that. Now, how big is this Photon satellite? Well, Photon satellite is essentially an evolution of the Electron's kick stage. Okay, so Electron's kick stage, which is a single engine craft that circularizes the orbits of small satellites towards the end of Rocket Lab missions. So typically when you launch a satellite into space, your rocket, the orbit is most often elliptical. It may not be the exact orbit you want. Okay, so what happens is that for if you desire, say, kind of an altered orbit or a different what's known as inclination, then you would need a kick stage to basically, after it's delivered to orbit, you fire this thruster to shift it, to maneuver you to the right orbit. Okay, so this Photon is basically not adaptation. It evolved from that particular kick stage. Anyways, this is designed to last up to 5 years. So satellite, say you need some satellite to do something, it can last 5 years. And it could accommodate payloads. For instance, I use a camera example, weighing as much as 375 pounds or 170 kilograms. So that's quite lofty. That's pretty good. It's going to be built at Huntington Beach in California. And, yeah. And the first one, guess what? It's going to launch later this year, 2019, which is pretty cool. So, from New Zealand, by the way. So, we shall, when it's fully up and running, I'm sure there's going to be way more. All right. Might as well mention another satellite launch vehicle company that has made a little splash, Relativity. So Relativity is another small launch vehicle developer. Now, they're not going to develop small satellites. They're just building rockets. But it's pretty cool that some big-name companies are taking these smaller ones seriously. So on April 5th, they announced a contract with Telesat to launch a portion of that company's low Earth orbit broadband satellites. Okay, so and this is going to be in 2021. So in terms of the specifics contract, okay, obviously it's confidential, but CEO of Relativity, Tim Ellis, said, "What's really notable about this and why it's so important for Relativity in the industry is that this is the first time that Telesat or any major global satellite operator has selected a completely venture-based aerospace startup for launch services. The credibility of aligning with Telesat, we believe, is huge for Relativity is developing." So, what is Relativity developing? Well, Relativity is developing a launch vehicle called the Terran 1, Terran 1, which sounds pretty futuristic. I like that. Terran 1. So, it's designed to place up to over 2,500 pounds, or 1,250 kilograms, into low Earth orbit for $10 million per launch. Still pretty cheap and pretty hefty, I would say. So it's using a lot of additive manufacturing, so think 3D printing, to be able to produce the rocket inexpensively and quickly. I would highly recommend to look at their website. So this is pretty cool how they do things. So they're definitely taking a unique approach to doing this, to basically design the whole rocket pretty much from 3D printing, which is how they attracted Telesat's attention. So now, of course, Telesat is not limiting themselves to just Relativity. In January 2019, they announced a contract with Blue Origin for multiple launches. Okay, so And now Blue Origin is for way heavier payloads, like 45 metric tons into low Earth orbit. So what they're going to do is that they're going to use Terran 1 to fill in the gaps of the smaller stuff. And they're going to use heavier launch vehicles like Blue Origin's New Glenn to launch much heavier payloads. Okay, so by the way, just a note: Relativity said that it could manufacture this from raw materials to launch ready within 60 days. That is super fast. 2 months ready to launch. That's in this world. It's in this industry. It's pretty wild. All right. So Telesat is going to have more than 100 satellites for its initial constellation, and eventually could grow up to 292 satellites, which is a lot, but not as a lot as remember what SpaceX and this other company O3B and forget. Oh gosh, there's one other company that proposed to have like a couple thousand satellites up there in one constellation. Yeah, I think that's going to happen. So hopefully it does. So. All right, last thing to note here while I'm talking about all these space entrepreneurs. So Boeing Starliner, a much heavier hitter. I mean, come on, Boeing, right? So the Starliner that's going to send commercial crew to the space station. Apparently, it is... so originally, the crew was only going to stay there for, what, a month or two, something like that? Well, NASA, earlier this month, in April, has decided to say we're possibly going to extend it. So your commercial astronauts could stay there longer. So Phil McAllister, director of the Commercial Spaceflight Division at NASA headquarters, said, quote, NASA's assessment of extending the mission was found to be technically achievable without compromising the safety of the crew. Commercial crew flight tests, along with additional Soyuz opportunities, help us transition with greater flexibility to our next generation commercial systems under the commercial crew program. So that is cool, right? Yeah, so Boeing right now is definitely heavily under testing. Technically it could fly right now, but going to have some additional time. Boeing's going to have some additional time to conduct additional testing of the spacecraft, right? We want to make sure it works. SpaceX is, remember that one, that initial demo was a few weeks back, and that did not have humans though, and that worked pretty well. So hopefully Boeing's also works well, more the merrier, I think. So with that, I think we'll take a quick little break. When we come back, let's talk about some science and some other weird stuff.
Where your community is. Get in the action. Action 1. Independent thinkers working together. Inspiring action in media. Get in the action. Inspire today. Join us by being a sponsor at weareA1.com.
Growing up as a black kid in New Jersey, all I ever wanted to do was be a pro athlete. All of my role models were black athletes. And every time I would stare out the window, look at the sky, and wonder what I'd be in the future, it always had to do with me catching some crazy football and scoring a touchdown. When it came to the point that I was told that I would not be able to play on an organized sports team for the rest of my life, it was something that I really didn't even know how to stomach in the moment. And I remember walking out of my cardiologist's office and just sitting in the hallway and breaking down for a few minutes just because it was something that I just couldn't plan for and couldn't account for. And I realized that in that moment, my entire life was going to be changed. And all of those dreams and hopes and aspirations that I had were going to go out of the window.
Man, you still here? Go on and subscribe.
Get in action. Yo, we back at it again, baby.
What?
Get in action.
3.
Get in action.
Tell me what is the deal, tell me what is the deal. So I challenge you today to start strong.
Get in the action.
Tell me what is the deal. Cause I'm calling for you.
Get in the action.
Can you feel that? Yeah. See, I'm calling for you. Can you feel that? Yeah. See, I'm calling
And guess what? We are back. This is Shen Ge, the host of SG2 on Space, episode number 28. So we covered quite a bit in this episode. Talked about mostly some of the announcements at the National Space Symposium at Colorado Springs. I wish I was there, but alas, at work over here. So, but in any case, so, talked about extending the space station beyond 2030. Excellent. Land on the moon by 2024. NASA submitting a new budget for that. Wonderful. Lockheed Martin releasing some of the newer designs based on the latest scheduling changes. Israeli lunar probe, or actually lander, unfortunately failed. Good try, though. Kind of crash landing on the moon. Startup Rocket Lab is apparently now building satellite platforms. Smaller startups like Relativity apparently is garnering attention from large communication satellite operators like Telesat for some of the first time ever. And then Boeing Starliner commercial crew test flight is proceeding ahead, and NASA may have them be extended for their crew to stay on the space station. So, all right, with that news, why don't we talk a little bit about science? Just a little bit, because we're running a little short on time here. All right, so Mars apparently has methane, and the methane is somehow disappearing, which is really strange. Now, methane, scientists really have been puzzled over the presence of methane on Mars for years. Since methane could be one indication of life, it's not necessarily, but say on Earth, a lot of our methane is generated from life. Okay, so so it's pretty tantalizing to imagine that the methane on Mars also had a biological origin, right? But now, April 10th, researchers have reported results from the Trace Gas Orbiter, the spacecraft that's been orbiting the red planet, basically looking for signs of life. And to his surprise, TGO, Trace Gas Orbiter, found almost no traces of methane, which is like, whoa, what's going on here? The TGO is the most sensitive instrument to measure methane on Mars, all right? So, which is why this discrepancy? It means that somehow methane is getting destroyed. Maybe it's somehow getting destroyed in the lower reaches of the Martian atmosphere. If that's the case, scientists don't really know how. All right, so there were two completely independent instruments analyzed by two totally independent teams, and they came to the same results: that there's like no methane on Mars now, whereas there was before. All right, since TGO has another gas measuring instrument known as NOMAD. Okay, so now. Marco Giordano, a scientist in Rome. Okay, I'm not going to try to pronounce Italian. He said that the presence of this gas on Mars is likely due to transient emission spikes rather than by global presence. Now, whether is that really true? Like, we only detected because it was it just happened to be at a certain spot, a high concentration. I don't know. But I would think that would mean, well, that is still strange, because even if you produce something in methane at one point, the gas will spread out throughout the whole planet. So we don't know. Somehow something's happening. All right. So further research needed. So there is a paper out, which I will share on facebook.com/The Shen Show later. And anybody interested could take a look. So another thing of note is this is cool news. There's advancements in space weather forecasts. Space weather, just like here on Earth, weather pretty much affects us all the time. Space weather, although many of us don't think about space weather as much, in other words, what's happening with the sun, it's also extremely significant, especially since we're so dependent on satellites and electronics these days. So, when solar activity increases, high energy particles, what happens during what's known as solar particle events, when the sun basically burps, okay, quote unquote, and shoots out a bunch of charged particles. Those when they hit our satellites, they can pretty much scramble their electronics, like cause them to, short circuit, scramble the data, cause a lot of errors, and basically render them inoperable. And we are heavily dependent on satellites. Okay. So weirdly enough, just so you guys know that because our ironically, it's the fact that we are so good at miniaturizing electrical components that makes them more vulnerable. Since our electronic components are so tiny these days, that means they really don't require much voltage. Okay, this means that a small particle, whereas before when we had those big clunky things, it wouldn't charge up the circuit much, right? There wouldn't be enough to cause it to to allow current to flow through. But now it does, because ours is so sensitive to changing voltage. So, any case, so there's a new study published in the Space Weather Journal, and it basically showed how scientists can now predict some of this a day in advance, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's still very helpful than, say, a few hours, which I think is what we have right now. So the study's lead author is a Chinese guy, Yue Chen, I presume, is a space scientist at the Los Alamos National Laboratory, and he basically says this, which is a repeat of what I just said, but maybe he puts it in better words. Society's growing reliance on modern technology infrastructures make us especially vulnerable to space weather threats. If our GPS or communication satellites fail, it could have wide-reaching negative impacts on everything from air travel to bank transactions. So being able to accurately predict space weather has been a goal for a very long time. This model is a firm step towards being able to do that. So what does this model use? Well, it uses two satellites to predict when a solar storm is coming. The first is Los Alamos National Laboratory satellite in low Earth sun synchronous orbit. The second is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, better known as NOAA, NOAA's satellite in low Earth orbit. So the researchers, they used a connect-the-dots approach to create a reliable model of solar storms and high-energy particles, okay? They then correlated between the electrons and the satellite orbits and identified informational triggers that can predict changes in these high-energy electrons in the outer radiation belt. And there was a lot of science data and math, okay, and some coding. So let's hope this works well. Hopefully they can do it, beyond just one day. That's my hope. Even better models, okay? So with that, we are done. Just kidding. We are not done. Since you forgot something. I just want to talk about life in space, or rather, really just aliens, okay? UFOs. All right, so what is happening there? Apparently, Texas is getting our own rush, and all around the country, but let's talk about Texas. It's since January 2019, it's crazy. There's been at least 24 repeated unidentified flying objects reported throughout the state. And that reported, remember, that means there might be people, there's probably twice as many people, or 3 times as many people who have observed something and just didn't report it for fear of being ridiculed, or they didn't know where to report it, okay? So, for you guys who don't know how to report it, don't know where to report it, by the way, there's something called National UFO Reporting Center, and it's completely anonymous. Okay, you can go there and report it. So, in fact, but please don't report it and just make up some random story, all right? Because, yeah. All right, so what's going on here? Okay, let's start from Austin, right? I picked some of the bigger cities. So, in Austin, on February 15th, 2019, obviously, okay, February 15th, at around 8:33, what happened is 2 glowing spheres, okay, and I'm reading this out. 2 glowing spheres seen in the sky north of the airport, at first moving together in the same direction, emitting yellow to orange light, which was very different from the lights of a jetliner that was on approach to the airport. Both were coming towards us, but then at different times they changed and started moving away. And a note from the database site, source of report describes herself as a medical professional. Witness provides high-quality video, which shows 2 orange lights moving from right to left across the field of view of the video camera. Okay, clearly I need to post some of these up later, which is fine. Okay, let's move on closer to where some of us live, that is, or at least me. Actually, not that close. But anyways, the Woodlands, Texas, which is about half hour north of downtown Houston. Okay, half hour, 45 minutes. So on March 15th at 6:20, I guess in the morning, here's what happened. I was driving my car in an eastern direction and noticed a large bluish green light shaped like a ball moving smooth and extremely fast. Much faster than a fighter jet, approximately 10,000 feet, and there was no noise while it flew through the sky. The unknown flying object was the size of a blimp. I'm still in a state of shock from this unusual sight that occurred at 6:20 a.m. Okay, 3:15, March 15th, as I was exiting my immediate neighborhood street. I truly pray there may be others that witnessed a strange, bright, bluish-green orb that soared quietly and quickly across the early morning horizon. Wow, sounds a little poetic. Yeah, if I lived up there, I would have seen it too, since I'm always looking up, but now, sorry. Actually, maybe I wouldn't even be awake at that time. All right, Sugarland, Texas, all right, closer in. Sugarland, I'm just going to read this last one. March 28th, okay, which is fairly recent, right? Around 5 o'clock. My friend, okay, so there were 25, oh my gosh, there were 25 golden white lights flying together in loose formation. So my friend and I were sitting on the patio of his apartment when I spotted a tightly clustered group of approximately 25 golden white lights flying northeast towards Houston. A few of them seemed to lazily weave between the other lights in side-to-side manner. No sound was observed. The entire event lasted for less than a minute due to light pollution and the speed/trajectory of the objects. The other witness, my friend, attempted to record the event but couldn't find the objects through his phone's camera. It's worth mentioning that this is not the only UFO sighting we have witnessed from this exact same location. The previous sighting, maybe 3 weeks ago, was only seen clearly by my friend but occurred in a bright, cloudless afternoon sky. There was only one object seen. It appeared to change in and out of an S shape and appeared dark in color. I will ask him to file a report from his perspective. Crazy stuff. All right, 25 lights. Come on. That's a lot. I mean, what are these aliens doing? Seriously. Or the U.S. military. I'm going to assume it's aliens since I don't think we developed technology yet that can travel so fluidly and make no sound. All right. Because I assume that if we had that technology, we'll be using it for everybody else that we're spying on and stuff and haven't heard anything. So, yes, aliens. All right. With that, I would say thanks for listening to episode 28 of SG2 on Space. Follow us at facebook.com/The Shen Show, TheShenShow. Also follow the lovely Action One Media group, right? At facebook.com/Action One Media. Check out the Action One Media website at weareA1.com. And of course, the YouTube channel at youtube.com/Action One Media. And my channel at youtube.com/cast720. youtube.com/CST725. And don't forget, with all the weird things happening in the sky, look up, because you never know what you'll see. Maybe you'll be the next one filing that report. All right.
Peace, it's Brother Atum Ra, and you tuned in to Action One Network.